The attack on Earth. The sun had just risen over Earth, casting a warm glow over the cities below. People went about their normal lives, some rushing to work, others enjoying a peaceful morning. No one could have predicted what would happen next. Without warning, the sky above Earth darkened. Massive ships, unlike anything humanity had ever seen, appeared. They were enormous, far bigger than any aircraft the world's nations had ever constructed. These ships didn't look like peaceful visitors. Their dark, menacing shapes blocked out the sun, casting shadows over the cities. The world fell silent. At first, people thought it was some sort of strange, large-scale exercise. But as the ships started to descend, the reality set in. These were not peaceful visitors. These were invaders. Across the world, chaos erupted. Governments scrambled to understand what was happening, but it was too late. The ships opened fire. Giant beams of energy shot down from them, striking the ground with deadly precision. The first bombs dropped, and the world witnessed its first taste of terror. Cities crumbled. Buildings turned to rubble. People screamed in panic as the destruction swept across the globe. In New York, the iconic skyline was shattered in seconds. The skyscrapers that had once stood as symbols of human achievement now lay in ruins, their jagged remains towering above the smoldering remains of the city. The same fate befell cities like Paris, Tokyo, and London. No place was spared. Governments around the world tried to act fast. They sent out messages for help, requesting military assistance from allies. But it was clear that Earth was facing an enemy far beyond its capability to defend. The invaders weren't just using advanced weapons. They were using technology that humanity couldn't even begin to understand. As the attacks continued, the world's leaders convened in emergency meetings. There was panic in their eyes, but also confusion. Who were these invaders? What did they want? How did they find Earth? But the questions didn't matter. The bombs kept falling. In the United Nations, the Secretary General stood before a screen, watching as the destruction unfolded. The faces of world leaders were pale, their expressions grim. They couldn't hide the fear that had taken over. The cities were falling, one after another, and there seemed to be no stopping it. "This is not just an attack," the Secretary General whispered. "It's a massacre." The message was clear. Earth was under attack, and there was no escape. People ran to shelters, trying to survive, but it was difficult. The bombs were so powerful that even the deepest bunkers couldn't protect everyone. Those who tried to flee were caught in the chaos. Cars crashed as they tried to escape the burning cities. People fled on foot, desperate to find safety, but there was no place to hide. The invaders didn't stop. The attack seemed endless. It wasn't just the bombing that terrorized the people of Earth. The aliens also sent down their foot soldiers, strange, powerful creatures that resembled nothing human. These beings were armed with weapons that sent blasts of energy, disintegrating everything they touched. They marched through the ruins of Earth's cities, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. As the day turned into night, the invaders broadcast a chilling message across all frequencies. It was simple, but its meaning was unmistakable. "Earth belongs to us now." The words echoed through the broken cities, leaving the world in stunned silence. The aliens had come to conquer. There was no negotiation, no discussion. They had already decided that Earth was theirs. In the midst of this devastation, one question lingered in the minds of the survivors. Why Earth? What had Earth done to deserve such an attack? The planet was not rich in resources compared to other worlds, and it didn't hold any strategic importance in the grand scheme of the galaxy. It was a small, relatively unknown world. Yet, for some reason, the invaders had chosen Earth to be their next target. As the attacks continued through the night, humanity realized they were not just fighting against a powerful enemy, they were fighting against an unknown. No one knew who these invaders were, where they came from, or why they had chosen Earth, and that made it even more terrifying. Meanwhile, in hidden underground bunkers, a few brave souls began to plan. The leaders of the world were not giving up. There were still people fighting back. Even as the alien soldiers marched through the streets, there were pockets of resistance. Humans weren't just sitting back and accepting their fate. Some took to the streets with makeshift weapons, trying to defend their homes. But their efforts were futile against the might of the alien invaders. The world had fallen into chaos. Earth's greatest cities lay in ruins, and the enemy was showing no signs of stopping. But amidst the destruction, something deep inside humanity stirred. For the first time, humanity truly understood what it meant to fight for survival. The invaders may have had advanced weapons and technology, but they had underestimated one thing: the resilience of humanity. The invaders had bombed Earth, thinking it was a simple act of domination, but they hadn't counted on the strength of those who called it home. Humanity would rise. They had to. But how? No one knew yet. The governments were in disarray. People were afraid, scattered, and unsure of what to do. Still, humanity would not go down without a fight. Earth had been bombed, but there was something far worse for the invaders waiting in the wings: the humans' next move. Something they would never expect. The day of Earth's destruction had begun, but it was far from over. The real battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, and the world would soon see the unexpected consequences of bombing a planet like Earth. The next morning, the world was still reeling from the devastation of the previous day. Cities lay in ruins, fires raged across the landscape, and the world's governments were struggling to respond. However, amidst the chaos and destruction, there was something else: an undeniable spark of resistance. Humanity was wounded, but not broken. Across the world, small groups of survivors began to regroup, determined to fight back. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Armed with nothing more than scraps of weapons and the will to survive, they formed resistance movements. In underground bunkers, in ruined buildings, in the hills and forests. The remnants of humanity began to prepare for what seemed like an impossible battle. Meanwhile, the alien invaders didn't show signs of slowing down. Their ships still hovered in Earth's atmosphere, their advanced weapons still raining destruction on the planet's surface. The alien soldiers patrolled the broken cities, hunting for any survivors. Earth's armies were decimated, and the technology the aliens had was far superior to anything humanity had ever known. Yet there was one thing the invaders didn't understand about Earth: the strength of the human spirit. In what was once Washington, D.C., a group of survivors gathered in a makeshift command center. Among them were scientists, military leaders, and civilians who had once led normal lives. But now, they all shared a common goal: survival. "Listen up," Colonel Hunter, the leader of the Galactic group, shouted over the noise of the crowded room. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to finish us off. We need to strike back. No." The room fell silent as the survivors exchanged looks of uncertainty. "But how?" one scientist asked. "They've wiped out our military, our cities. We have nothing left. What can we do?" Hunter stood tall, his eyes filled with determination. "We fight with what we have. The aliens may have advanced technology, but they don't know Earth like we do. We can use that to our advantage. They may have taken our cities, but they haven't broken our will." The survivors nodded, a new sense of purpose starting to form within them. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of their resistance. Across the globe, similar meetings were taking place. In Europe, a group of survivors had discovered an underground military base that had been left untouched by the initial wave of attacks. It was a small victory, but it was enough to give them hope. They began scavenging for weapons and supplies, preparing for their first strike against the alien invaders. In Asia, a team of scientists worked tirelessly, trying to reverse engineer the alien technology they had salvaged from the wreckage. They knew that humanity couldn't beat the invaders with conventional weapons alone. They needed something that could level the playing field. But time was running out, and every hour the aliens were gaining ground. Back in the United States, Colonel Hunter's group made their first move. They had learned that the aliens had established a command center near what was once Chicago, and it seemed to be where the invaders were coordinating their attacks. Hunter knew that if they could take out the command center, it would be a major blow to the invaders. But it wouldn't be easy. The aliens were well protected, and they had no idea how to approach such a heavily guarded fortress. "We need to be smart about this," said Lieutenant Miller, a former military strategist who had joined Hunter's group. "We can't just rush in headfirst. We'll need a distraction, something to draw their attention away from our real target." The survivors quickly devised a plan. They would stage a small diversion on the outskirts of the city, drawing the alien soldiers to one side. Meanwhile, a smaller team would infiltrate the command center and destroy its central control systems. It was a long shot, but it was the best chance they had. As the group prepared for the mission, an air of tension filled the room. They knew the risks, but they also knew that if they didn't act, Earth would fall. The invaders weren't just here to destroy. They were here to conquer, and they would stop at nothing to do so. The team set off under the cover of darkness, moving quickly and quietly through the ruins. They had to be careful. Alien patrols roamed the streets, searching for any sign of life. But they weren't just hiding from the aliens. They were also preparing for their moment to strike. In the early hours of the morning, the diversion was set into motion. Explosions rocked the outskirts of the city, causing the alien forces to scramble toward the disturbance. It was working. The aliens were distracted. It was time for the real mission to begin. Hunter and his team moved in quickly, using the chaos to their advantage. They crept through the desolate streets, avoiding the alien soldiers as they made their way toward the command center. They reached the outskirts of the building, but they couldn't go any further without being spotted. "This is it," Miller whispered, checking his weapon. "We have one shot at this." With the distraction in full swing, the team infiltrated the command center. The walls of the building were thick and reinforced, but Hunter and his team had the right tools. They planted explosives at key points, setting the timers for the countdown. As they made their way out, the countdown began. They barely had time to make it to safety before the massive explosion shook the ground beneath their feet. The command center was destroyed, and for the first time since the attack began, humanity had scored a small victory. The explosions rang out across the city, but there was no time to celebrate. The aliens would be furious, and their retaliation would be swift and brutal. But for the first time since the bombing, there was hope. Humanity had shown the invaders that they weren't going down without a fight. As the dust settled, a new message echoed across the globe, transmitted across all frequencies. "We're not finished yet. Humanity will rise." It was a signal, not just to the invaders, but to every survivor on Earth. The fight for Earth had just begun, and humanity was ready to show the aliens that they had underestimated the power of a species fighting for its home. The real battle for Earth was only beginning. The struggle ahead would be long, hard, and full of peril. But as the survivors moved forward, they knew one thing for sure: they would never give up. The small victory achieved by the survivors in the United States was far from over. It was only the beginning of a long and bloody war. When the news of the destruction of the alien command center spread across Earth, the invaders responded with rage. The attack on their fortress wasn't just a setback, it was a humiliation. The Deathworlders had poked the hornet's nest, and now the hornets were coming. Within hours, the alien warships above Earth began to mobilize, and the skies were filled with ominous ships. Massive and heavily armed, they cast an eerie shadow over the devastated planet. The invaders' command had clearly underestimated the tenacity of humanity. It was no longer just a planet's struggle for survival. Earth was now at war with an entire galaxy's worth of hostile species, and the aliens were intent on erasing all traces of resistance. The survivors, however, weren't about to back down. They knew this retaliation was inevitable, but they also understood that they had just proven something critical. They had fought back and survived. The aliens could destroy cities, wipe out armies, and bomb their planet, but they could never destroy humanity's resolve. The survivors would rise again. In the United States, Colonel Hunter and his team were already making plans for the next phase. The destruction of the command center was a start, but now they had to prepare for what was coming. They couldn't just defend the planet. No, they had to make the invaders pay for every ounce of suffering they had caused. Back at their makeshift headquarters, the survivors were gathering around a map, brainstorming how to strike back. "We've got the aliens' attention," Hunter said grimly, tapping a marker on the map. "But we don't have much time. We know their ships are planning a counterattack, and we can't let them regroup." Lieutenant Miller, always the strategist, nodded. "We need to use their aggression against them. We know they're going to hit our strongest positions first, but we can't wait around for them to pick us off one by one. We've got to hit them where it hurts." Another survivor chimed in. "Their supply lines, their factories. Destroy their ability to keep attacking. We have to go on the offensive." But there was a catch. These were the same forces that had obliterated Earth's military with ease. Their ships were superior, their weapons deadly. The survivors didn't have much, just scattered military equipment, old weapons, and some alien tech they had managed to salvage. "We may be outgunned, but they're not invincible," Hunter said with a fierce glint in his eyes. "We'll take them down bit by bit. They've underestimated us, and that's going to cost them." The survivors were determined. They began gathering intel on alien movements, using every available resource to pinpoint their next target. As the countdown to the alien retaliation began, the survivors scrambled to prepare for the impossible. Around the world, similar resistance movements were starting to take shape. In Europe, the underground forces had gathered in the remnants of Paris. In Asia, a team of scientists had succeeded in reverse engineering some of the alien technology, and they were now working on a plan to level the playing field. In Africa, guerrilla fighters were using the harsh terrain to their advantage, setting up traps and ambushes for alien patrols. The world was broken, but its people were uniting in ways they never had before. Though Earth's forces had been shattered, humanity's will was far from broken. As the days passed, the alien forces began their first wave of retaliation. Cities that had barely survived the first bombardment were hit again, and the survivors were forced to scatter once more. But this time, there was no fear. The survivors were learning from their past mistakes. They knew the aliens would strike hard, but they also knew that they could strike back. One evening, a new message was intercepted by Earth's makeshift communication network. It was a cryptic message, but it was clear. The aliens were moving closer to Earth's last line of defense. They were coming for the last strongholds of humanity. "Time is running out," Miller said as he looked at the message. "But we're not done yet." The survivors had a plan. It was risky, and it would require everything they had, but they had no choice. The world's remaining weapons were about to be aimed directly at the alien fleet. If this attack failed, Earth might be doomed. But if they succeeded, it would show the Deathworlders just how wrong they were to think they could destroy humanity. As the team began to prepare, they knew this wouldn't be an easy fight. The alien retaliation would be devastating, and they would have to fight on all fronts. It would be a battle of endurance, strategy, and sheer determination. The survivors would have to use every ounce of their strength and ingenuity to hold their ground. In the shadows of ruined cities, with fires still burning in the distance, the survivors took their places. They knew what was at stake. The earth had been bombed, the skies had been darkened. But as long as they had breath in their lungs, they would fight. The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and humanity would make sure that the Deathworlders would never forget the day they tried to wipe out humanity. The countdown had begun. As the days grew darker, Earth's resistance forces grew bolder. The alien retaliation had struck with unimaginable force, but something was shifting. The survivors, those who had once cowered beneath the alien might, were no longer afraid. Instead, they had a fire in their hearts, a fire that would burn through the invaders' plans. Colonel Hunter and his team had worked tirelessly, organizing and preparing for the next phase of humanity's fight. The survivors had been scattered, their numbers decimated, but they had learned from each battle. They had gathered intelligence on the aliens' weaknesses and had begun to piece together a strategy to strike back at the heart of the invaders' power. Hunter stood before his team, looking over the maps spread across the table. The air was thick with tension, but there was a determination in his eyes, one that had grown stronger with every victory and every loss. They thought they could break us. They thought they could destroy everything we loved. But they were wrong. We're not going down without a fight. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed his words. They knew what was at stake. They had already lost so much: cities, loved ones, entire regions of the world. Yet they still had one thing the aliens could never take: their spirit. "All right," Hunter continued. "We know their fleet is gathering above Earth. They'll try to crush us once and for all. But this time, we've got something they don't expect. We've got Earth's hidden weapons. We've got our people. And we got each other. We're going to make them regret ever thinking they could take us down." Across the room, Lieutenant Miller nodded. "We've got enough to hit them hard, but we have to move quickly. The longer we wait, the stronger their forces get." Hunter's mind raced. The aliens were relentless, but humanity's resolve had never been stronger. They had the element of surprise on their side. They were fighting for their homes, their families, and their planet. That was a force greater than any alien weapon. As the survivors prepared for the next wave, they began to assemble the tools and technologies they had scavenged from the remnants of the alien ships. There were weapons they had never used before, alien tech they had only begun to understand. But they knew one thing for sure: these technologies were Earth's best chance at fighting back. Hunter walked among the survivors, checking their equipment. His eyes locked onto a young soldier, one who had lost everything in the first wave of the invasion. The soldier was working on an alien weapon, adjusting its settings with a look of fierce concentration. Hunter could see the determination in his eyes. "You okay?" Hunter asked quietly. The soldier glanced up, his face hardened. "I'm ready, sir. We all are. We've lost too much already to let them win." Hunter smiled faintly, proud of the spirit that had been ignited in these survivors. "Good. Keep it up." The clock was ticking. The alien fleet was growing larger, and they were closer than ever to launching a full-scale attack. The survivors knew this was their last chance to strike back. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. And so the plan was set into motion. The survivors split into teams, each with a specific objective. Some would hit the alien ships, trying to cripple their fleet. Others would launch assaults on the alien bases, taking out key infrastructure to slow their advance. Every single survivor had a role to play. For Hunter and his team, their task was to infiltrate the heart of the alien command center, the very place where the invaders were coordinating their assault. It was a dangerous mission, one that would require stealth, precision, and a lot of luck. But luck was something they were willing to gamble on. As the teams prepared to move out, the tension was palpable. Every soldier knew this was their moment. This was the fight that would define the future of humanity. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If they failed, the Earth would fall, and humanity would be wiped out. Hunter looked at his team one last time. "We've been through hell and back, but we're still standing. Now let's show these aliens just how wrong they were." With that, the teams dispersed, each taking their assigned route. The quiet before the storm was deafening. The sound of boots on the cracked earth echoed through the ruins as the survivors moved into position. As they approached the alien command center, Hunter couldn't help but think back to the first days of the invasion. The helplessness they had all felt, the devastation of watching their world crumble. But now, as he crept through the shadows with his team, he felt something else, something stronger than fear. He felt hope. Hope that they could win this. Hope that they could drive the invaders from their home. The alien forces had underestimated humanity. They had thought Earth was just another weak, defenseless planet. They had thought bombing Earth would break the people. But they were wrong. Humanity had survived, and now they were ready to fight back. And this time, they weren't just defending their homes. They were taking the fight to the invaders. The battle for Earth was about to reach its breaking point. Would the survivors be able to strike a fatal blow against the invaders, or would they fall to the might of a force they could never match? One thing was certain: their enemies had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. And now, the invaders would see just how much that would cost them. The ground shook as explosions rippled through the air. Hunter's heart pounded in his chest as he and his team advanced toward the heart of the alien command center. The world around them was a mess of chaos and destruction, but their focus was unwavering. The mission was clear: strike at the invaders' core, cripple their ability to command, and turn the tide of the war. Hunter's breath came in shallow bursts as he crouched low behind the remains of a shattered building. His eyes scanned the horizon, watching as plumes of smoke billowed from the distant battlefield. The alien ships above Earth were a terrifying sight, but he knew they weren't invincible. They had vulnerabilities, just like anything else. It was just a matter of finding them, exploiting them, and acting quickly. His radio crackled to life, breaking through the tense silence. "Colonel, we're in position. Ready for the next phase," came the voice of Lieutenant Miller, who led the strike team at the rear. Hunter nodded and keyed in his comms. "Roger that, Lieutenant. Hold your position until we give the signal. We need to get close enough to breach the command center. Stay sharp." As they moved forward, the air felt thick with danger. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the alien fortress. Hunter could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Failure was not an option. Too many lives had already been lost. Too much had been sacrificed. The team moved in near silence, using the debris as cover, their movements calculated. The alien sentries, though powerful, were few and far between. The invaders had grown overconfident, thinking their defenses were impenetrable. But humanity had adapted. They had learned to fight differently, to use their enemies' arrogance against them. The alien technology they had salvaged in the last few days had been a game-changer. It wasn't just about brute force anymore. They had modified alien weapons, adapted their tech for their own use, and equipped their soldiers with weapons that even the aliens hadn't expected. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were learning to outsmart the invaders. As Hunter crept closer to the command center, the building's massive structure loomed before him, an impenetrable fortress made of dark, sleek metal. The entrance was guarded by alien drones, their glowing eyes scanning for any signs of movement. Hunter gestured for his team to halt. They had reached the final stretch. "We've got one shot at this," Hunter whispered to his team. "We take out the guards, then breach the entrance. No mistakes." Each soldier nodded. They had trained for this moment for weeks, running simulations, studying alien behavior patterns, and preparing for every scenario. This wasn't just a mission. It was humanity's chance to strike back and reclaim their world. Hunter held up his hand, signaling the attack. The team sprang into action, moving with precision. The burst of energy from one of their modified alien rifles took down the nearest drone before it could alert the others. Another soldier threw a flash grenade, temporarily blinding the remaining sentries. The chaos that followed was brief but intense. Within moments, the guards were neutralized, and the team had cleared the path to the entrance. They moved quickly, taking cover as they reached the thick, reinforced doors of the command center. Hunter checked his watch. The signal for the other teams to launch their attack was set. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. "This is it," he muttered under his breath, as he placed the explosive charges on the door. Time to give them a reason to regret bombing Earth. With a sharp hiss, the door blasted open, and Hunter led his team inside. The interior of the command center was just as alien as the outside, cold, sterile, and filled with unfamiliar technology. Large, cylindrical machines hummed quietly in the background, while screens flickered with cryptic alien symbols. The air was thick with tension as they made their way through the winding corridors, every footstep echoing in the silence. They reached the heart of the command center, an enormous control room. At the center of the room stood a massive glowing console, surrounded by a group of alien officers. They were unlike any of the invaders they had fought before. These were the leaders, the architects of the destruction that had befallen Earth. Hunter's heart raced as he sized up the enemy. This was the moment of truth. They couldn't afford to hesitate. The aliens turned toward them, their weapons ready, but their expressions betrayed surprise and confusion. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected humanity to strike back so decisively. One of the aliens, clearly the leader, spoke in a guttural language, its voice reverberating throughout the room. "You, humans, think you can defeat us? You are nothing." Hunter didn't flinch. "We're not just fighting to survive. We're fighting to make sure you never threaten Earth again." Without warning, he gave the signal. The rest of the team opened fire, their alien rifles firing in synchronized bursts. The leader staggered back, and the other aliens scrambled to retaliate. But Hunter's team was faster. They were better. The elements of surprise and technology were on their side. The battle was swift but intense, and within minutes, the command center fell into chaos. The alien leader crumpled to the ground, his last breath escaping in a hiss of frustration. Hunter stood over the fallen alien, breathing heavily. "This is just the beginning," he muttered. "You've made a grave mistake." With the command center compromised, the remaining alien forces above Earth would soon be in disarray. The invaders no longer had the ability to coordinate their attacks, and chaos would soon spread through their ranks. The battle for Earth had just taken a turn, and the survivors knew that they had gained the upper hand. But Hunter also knew one thing for certain: the war was far from over. The aliens had underestimated humanity before. Now they would learn what it meant to face the full force of Earth's fury. And this time, there would be no mercy. The battle on Earth had shifted. The command center's destruction was a significant victory, but Hunter knew it was far from the end. There was still the entire alien fleet above them, still the invaders' overwhelming numbers, and still the hunger for vengeance that drove them. But something had changed in the air. A crack had appeared in the seemingly impenetrable wall the aliens had built. Hunter stood on the battlefield, watching as the remnants of the alien forces tried to regroup. The streets of their once pristine cities were now littered with wreckage, and the once clean skies were filled with the smoke of battle. Humanity had fought back, and they were showing the invaders that they were not to be underestimated. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming what was theirs. As Hunter and his team regrouped, Lieutenant Miller came over to report, "We've sent out the message to the other cells. They're mobilizing, Colonel. Earth's united like never before." Hunter's face was stoic as he glanced at the distant horizon. "We've won a few battles, Lieutenant, but the war isn't over, not until every alien ship in the sky is burning." Miller nodded, understanding the weight of his leader's words. The invaders had underestimated Earth once, but this time, humanity was not playing defense. They were on the offensive, and the aliens were about to learn what it meant to challenge a species that had nothing left to lose. The hours passed in a blur as the teams on the ground fought valiantly, driving back the remaining invaders. It was evident that the aliens' central command was falling apart. The invaders were no longer acting with the coordinated precision they once had. The soldiers on the ground were disorganized, confused, and retreating in small groups, unable to communicate with their superiors. In space, the alien ships that had once loomed over Earth now appeared more like scattered debris than an organized fleet. The humans had been forced into hiding, and now, with the advantage in technology and unity, they were taking the fight back to the invaders. The first human counteroffensive was a simple but effective maneuver. Hunter's team, alongside other Earth forces, had learned to use the alien technology against them. They'd modified their ships and weapons, adapting alien tech to human strengths. The result was devastating. The human fleet, once small and seemingly outmatched, now had firepower that rivaled the best of the invaders' arsenal. Their ships tore through the skies like a swarm of angry hornets, tearing apart the alien fleet piece by piece. But there was a catch. For every alien ship that fell, another one appeared in the sky. The invaders were desperate, their backs against the wall. They couldn't retreat. They had to hold Earth. They couldn't let this rebellion spread. Hunter's communication device buzzed to life. It was Miller again, her voice full of urgency. "Colonel, we've got a situation. The alien flagship has appeared in orbit. It's massive, heavily armored, and fully armed. We need to act fast before they regroup." Hunter's pulse quickened. This was what he had feared. The alien flagship was their last line of defense. If they could destroy it, the alien forces would crumble. But it wouldn't be easy. That ship was a fortress in itself. Its weapons could wipe out entire cities in a single shot. But Hunter didn't hesitate. The humans had nothing left to fear. The aliens had brought war to Earth, and they would pay the price. "We'll take it down, Miller," he said, his voice cold with determination. "Prepare the fleet. We're going in." With a snap of his fingers, the battle plans were set in motion. The ground forces continued their assault, creating distractions while the human fleet prepared for its final strike against the alien flagship. The tension was palpable as every human fighter, soldier, and strategist worked in unison toward the same goal: destroy the invaders' most powerful weapon. The countdown began. The fleets assembled in formation, and the ships powered up their weapons. In the distance, the alien flagship loomed, a giant, menacing presence, radiating energy and power. As the human ships neared their target, Hunter's mind raced. This was it. The moment when everything would either fall into place or crumble. They couldn't afford to fail now. "Fire at will," Hunter commanded, and the human fleet unleashed a barrage of laser fire and missiles, each strike aimed at the heart of the alien flagship. The immense craft retaliated with powerful beams of energy, but the human ships were fast, evasive, and relentless. Hunter's ship weaved through the barrage, a well-oiled machine, its weapons firing continuously. His team was with him, pushing forward, never slowing down. The sky was a chaotic swirl of flashing lights, explosions, and debris as the two fleets clashed in an all-out war for Earth's survival. But then, something incredible happened. The alien flagship began to falter. Its once impenetrable shields began to crack, its weapons fired sporadically, and its movements grew slower. The humans were succeeding. The flagship was on the verge of collapse. Hunter knew this was their moment. "We've got one shot at this. Push forward." The human fleet gave everything they had left, pouring every ounce of their firepower into the flagship. The alien ship's hull began to buckle under the assault. Explosions erupted from within the massive vessel as it struggled to maintain its defenses. Finally, with one final, earth-shattering explosion, the flagship crumpled and broke apart, its remains falling into the atmosphere. The warship that had once commanded the skies of Earth was no more. Hunter and his team watched as the alien fleet above them disintegrated. With their leader gone, the invaders scattered. The war was over. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was silence. The air was still. The smoke of battle hung low over the planet. And in that silence, humanity's victory rang loud and clear. Earth had been attacked, but now Earth had won. They had proven their strength, their resilience, and their will to survive. The invaders had learned one crucial lesson that day: never underestimate humanity. The war was over. Earth was battered, scared, and forever changed. But humanity had emerged victorious. The invaders, who had once looked down on the planet as nothing more than an insignificant speck in the universe, had been driven back. Their fleet, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, was now a scattered mess of debris in the skies. The alien forces had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had sealed their own fate. But even in victory, the cost had been high. Hunter stood on the broken streets of what had once been a bustling metropolis. The ruins of buildings surrounded him, their skeletons rising up like silent witnesses to the devastation. The echoes of battle still lingered in the air, the scent of burnt metal and smoke thick around him. But despite the destruction, there was a sense of relief in the air. Humanity had fought back, and they had won. "We did it," Lieutenant Miller said, her voice carrying a quiet awe. She stood beside Hunter, staring at the horizon, where the last remnants of the alien fleet were burning up as they fell toward Earth. Hunter didn't answer immediately. He was lost in thought, his gaze distant. Victory had come at a terrible price. Cities were in ruins, millions of lives had been lost, and the scars of war would remain for generations to come. The damage wasn't just physical. It was emotional, psychological. Humanity had been tested, and they had risen to the challenge. But the cost of that victory would be felt for years to come. "I know," he finally said, his voice heavy with the weight of the truth. "But at what cost?" Miller nodded, understanding. They had won, yes, but it didn't feel like a simple triumph. The cost of the war, the loss of lives, the destruction of homes, and the psychological toll on the survivors was a burden that would take a long time to heal. They had survived the worst, but the rebuilding had just begun. Hunter turned his gaze back to the sky, where the last few alien ships were retreating into the void. They had been defeated, but Hunter knew that they weren't the only threat in the universe. The galaxy was vast, and the victory over the invaders didn't mean Earth was safe forever. It was a reminder that the universe was full of dangers, and humanity would need to remain vigilant. "We've sent a message," Hunter said, his voice resolute. "The galaxy will know that Earth isn't a planet to be taken lightly. But we can't rest. Not yet." Miller gave him a nod of agreement. "We'll rebuild. Together." As the last of the alien ships disappeared from view, Hunter's thoughts turned to the future. Humanity had survived this trial, but there would be others. Earth had made its mark on the galaxy, but it was only the beginning of their journey. The war had shown them their strength, but it had also shown them their weaknesses. There was much to be learned from this conflict, much to be understood about their place in the universe. In the coming months, the world would rebuild. People would mourn the lost, celebrate the survivors, and learn from the mistakes of the past. But one thing was certain: humanity would not be the same. The once vulnerable Earth had become a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never forget the day they underestimated humanity. Earth had shown its power, and now it would show its resolve. The invaders had thought bombing Earth was smart, but in the end, humanity had proved them wrong in the most profound way possible. The final chapter of this war had been written, but the story of humanity had only just begun. And in the darkness of space, the stars glowed a little brighter, as if acknowledging the strength of a species that refused to bow down. Earth had fought, Earth had won, and Earth had made its mark on the universe. Hunter turned away from the sky, his heart full of a quiet, fierce pride. The fight for Earth had been a battle for survival, but it had also been a battle for identity. The world had been changed forever, but so had humanity, and they would face whatever came next, not as a fragile species, but as a force the universe could no longer ignore. Earth had won, and now the galaxy would remember.